Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia Crasco, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hi, Annmarie. Welcome to the podcast.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited for this conversation because I think that a lot of stepmoms struggle with. I have this conflict in my relationship. I don't know how to resolve it. And I feel like we keep having the same fights or the same conflicts over and over and over and over and over again. And I always say, like, you're going to keep having the same conflict or you're going to keep having the same fights until you learn the lesson you need to know. But you are thinking, like, okay, let's get to the root cause of this. What happens?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. You're going to keep having it until you get to the root cause. And you use the conflict as the portal to get to the root cause. I mean, that's why we have conflict. I always say conflict is your gateway to unconditional love. And that's why I love conflict so much because I know it is showing me where I am stuck or out of love, out of unconditional love.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
it's true because conflict is where we're contracted, where we're trying to control, where we think something's wrong, where we feel disempowered. That's why conflict's happening. And all of those things aren't true. We're not disempowered. We're not out of control. We actually have more power than we ever could possibly imagine when we're in a place of trust.
Mhm.
So the conflict, and the reason we slip out of trust is because we have some need, some part of ourselves went unmet in childhood or a long time ago. And then we create patterns to try and create safety. And from those patterns, we create conflict in the next relationship. So you're right. Conflict's going to keep happening until we get to that root cause. And that's the portal.
Oh my
Going.
gosh, yeah. Okay, so before we get completely into everything, you are also a stepmom and you've got a really interesting story. And so I think people that are like, oh, but are you a stepmom? Because I always talk to people and I'm like, oh, if you go to therapy and you go to counseling, that's amazing. And I love that for you. But if your therapist, counselor doesn't have any background or any experience in a blended family, it's almost more damage than it's worth because what happens and what works in a nuclear first origin family doesn't necessarily work. A lot of times it doesn't work in a blended family, whether you're a stepmom, a stepdad, step parent, whatever the situation is. So you actually are experienced in a blended family.
I do. My husband and I have a blended family of nine. So I have three kids. He has six, and he has six kids with three different mothers.
Is it two
So
to two and two?
it's three, two, and one.
Okay. And I can
So
imagine the conflict.
it's just like it's hard enough navigating blending family with your spouse
Hmm.
because you're getting all their stuff and all that.
Hmm.
Then you're adding the ex-spouse into the mix. And depending on the temperament of that person, the relationship with that person, their relationship, there's a whole host of things you're navigating, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm doing that times three, essentially, except the first set of my stepchildren, they're grown adults. They're in their 40s. They have families of their own. So it's just a different relationship. I'm not parenting any of them. But I'm still navigating that role as a secondary, person in their life, their dad's wife. And then the other three are in their 20s, so there is definitely more of a stepmother relationship because, I've been in relationship to my husband now for 14 years, so they were much younger when we all got involved. So it's been tricky, and we've dealt with a lot of addiction in this family system. So that's been pretty challenging to handle. Um, yeah, lots of conflict over the past 14 years, for sure.
Yes. And I think it's important to note that so your older ones are in their 40s and you came in 14 years ago. And I've never had anyone on to talk about like adult stepkids because I have adult stepkids too, as you know. And so you said I'm more of like dad's wife. And I've ebbed and flowed over the years. Like now I'm a stepmom, right? But like I have been like dad's girlfriend, that's my stepmom. Oh, that's dad's wife. That's my stepmom, like ebbs and flows on like how it's going. And sometimes I'm like, man, I had it really good just being like dad's wife. That
Yeah.
was really great, right? But then I also really relish in like being a stepmom too. So can you tell me just really briefly, we won't go in like a whole thing about this because this is what this podcast is about, but for somebody that's listening to this that has adult stepkids that came in when their stepkids were adults, can you talk to me about how you navigate that? Because you're right, you're not parenting them. And I think even though there's that terminology of stepmom, like you're not mothering them, you're not parenting them, like they're adults at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say you're not mothering them because I do believe that we're all mothering each other on some level. That's a whole nother conversation.
I would say
But
guiding, like I find like stepmoms when I'm like, you're like mothering somebody, especially if they don't have kids of their own, is kind of triggering or like very like, and if they wanted kids and like the ship has sailed or whatever the case may be. So I'm like, you can guide them, you can mentor them, you can be a leader for them. So I agree with you in the sense that like there's some sort of mothering that's going on, but sometimes people are like very adverse to the word mothering, and I'm like, okay.
yeah, it's how you defend mothering. Like mothering to me is opening one up back to their true nature. Like to me, that's what mothering is. We're nurturing one back to your true nature. And so that's why I say, like, I feel like you and I are doing that with each other right now. We're like bringing out the highest and best of one another. And that's what we do when we nurture each other. So to me, to mother is to nurture.
Mhm.
So I see my role to nurture every human being I come into contact with. And then, of course, your children are like next level because you and I are going to hang up this call and you're going to go on your merry way. But, like the people who are closest to you, you're like more entangled with. So, but in terms of the adult stepkids, I don't even really call them stepchildren. It feels odd to me to do that. We just have an adult friendship, it feels like. And um, yeah, and I think our relationships with our step kids or our bonus kids, however people like to define that, is highly impacted on the relationship that they have with their parent that we're involved with. So if they have a really strong relationship with your spouse, then the odds are that's going to translate more easily. Your relationship with them is going to translate more easily. And if the relationship is sometimes wonky or not quite figured out yet, then it's going to be harder for you to sort of eke in there and develop a relationship with. And that's that's tricky. That's tricky when you're coming into a system and you want to be careful not to rock the boat. You don't want to get in the way of things, but you want to find your place and I think it's really challenging. So my head bows to anyone on the call who's navigating all that because it is a deep, deep devotional practice of love and, yeah, commitment to relating.
Yeah, I think your point of your relationship with your adult stepchild is very dependent on that child, your stepchild's relationship with your spouse, your partner, whatever. And I have stepmoms that have come to me that have adult stepchildren, and most of the time they don't have kids of their own. And they're like, I'm trying to build this relationship. I can't figure out where it is. And I'm like, okay, well, what about your relationship with, or what about your partner's relationship with their kid? I'm like, well, it's not great. And I'm like, yeah, yours isn't going to be that great either until that relationship with their own parent is better because it's just this weird dynamic. I don't know how to describe. Yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be careful not to like emphatically say it's impossible. Of
Right.
course it's possible. It's just it's a bit more challenging to your point because your entry into these people's lives is through this other person.
Mhm.
So
They don't
that
like or they don't have a good relationship with.
exactly. And, they've got to work their things out. So I think being a step parent is a really hugely challenging thing to do. I think it's harder than being a parent because
Agree.
you're walking a little bit on eggshells. And I always, whenever I see things like on the news or on Instagram or videos where like the step parent and the bride and groom are getting married and it's the step parents bringing the child in and they have these deeply, loving, connected relationship. I'm always like, how do they do that? That's amazing. It's so beautiful. But I think it's a huge challenge and a huge gift. Like these people
Yeah.
are clearly brought into your life for a reason. So if we can continue to look at where's the gift, where's the gift, where's the gift, that's where I think we're better off.
Yeah. Okay, so back to conflict. So what what do you think people misunderstand the most about conflict?
But it's about the other person.
Of course it is, right? Like it's you versus me. No, it's not. Okay, so talk me through that.
So whenever we're in conflict, our attention always goes out on them, on that other person and what they're doing right or wrong that has caused me pain, discomfort, whatever. Now, I want to be careful that I am sure there's something going on that is causing discomfort 100%. But what happens is we put our attention on trying to get the other to change what they're doing without taking a look at how we have participated or been involved in co creating said conflict. And the other piece to this is we forget how powerful we are.
Yeah.
We forget and conflict happens or something happens and we immediately go into our egoic selves where we're trying to control, defend, deny, or change a situation, and we will never ever 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 change anything from our egoic selves. We just won't. That is not where change happens. The only thing that happens is we create more drama. So the shift happens when we come back over here and take 100% responsibility for the role that we're playing in that conflict and get back into a place of real personal power. And that's hard work.
That is really hard work. Yeah. Like I had told you when we talked the other day, when we went to marriage counseling, I was like, this is amazing, right? Like she's like, oh yeah, your husband's doing this wrong and he's doing that wrong. And she pointed all of these things out that I'd been saying for years. And shockingly, like he listened to her and not me. And then she was like, okay, Alicia, let's talk about you. And I'm like, what? Like I obviously have done nothing wrong. I had never been married and I don't have any kids. So like what baggage am I bringing? And she's like, well, let's talk about how you respond to someone saying that you're doing something wrong. And I'm like, don't do anything wrong. So yeah, right. So it's that is a really, really hard thing to grasp your head around, especially when your ego is driving the bus.
Yeah, which our ego is driving the bus 99% of the
And
time, right?
it's so fun, right?
It's such a blast. I just love it. Yeah. I think developing a relationship with my ego has been the hardest and most rewarding work I've done over the past 25 years. And really having compassion for all my egoic parts and getting to know them more deeply. It has taught me how to open my heart to myself and others in ways that I never knew how to do before. And that's what I would invite everyone listening in to practice is like, how can I use this conflict to get to know myself better so that I can be more compassionate with myself? Because once I can do that, it's so much easier for me to be compassionate with the other.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. So, what would you have somebody ask themselves if they are trying to figure out whether or not like fear or whatever other emotion is like driving the conflict in their relationship?
I have people go through a series of 4 questions, and we start with the most important question, which is one of my free giveaways, but I'm going to give it to your audience, which is where am I? And that question helps us discern, am I in a place of reactivity and fear right now? Or am I in a place of love and trust?
Mhm.
And the mind will have us say, I'm in a place of love and trust. Like, of course I am. Look at me. And you can feel, right? That's not true. But your mind wants to believe it because the ego is so, dang grippy. So if you can start to build your self-awareness muscle and really start to recognize when you're in a triggered and reactive state, and I think it's easy to do when reactivity is high, it's really hard to do when it's subtle.
Mhm.
That's what you have to start getting good at. Like, how can I get good at noticing when I'm in a triggered state when it's not like really high, when it's really activated. And that's what, the gift of, I share a free worksheet with my audience to help them learn to discern all the subtle cues that you are not used to paying attention to that will help flag you and say, okay, yeah, I'm actually in a triggered state right now, but I'm so skilled at tricking myself and others into believing I'm not that, we're all missing it. But the the way to know is if you're in any kind of conflict, you are absolutely in a triggered state and you're in some kind of fear. Your ego is trying to protect you from some threat. And it's usually an imagined threat. Because if you're running across the street and you're about to get hit by a car, that is not an imagined threat. Like that's a real threat. If you're having a conflict with your spouse or your stepchild or your stepchild's other parent, there's a threat to your ego. There's some threat to your safety that you're trying to secure for. And you got to go figure out what that is so that you can get underneath it to get to the need. If you can get to the need, then you can start to feel empowered for asking for and co-creating what you actually want. So most of us are so unconscious, we don't even know what the need is. We just need to feel, I just need to feel safe. I just need to feel safe. I just need to feel safe, and that's what we're all struggling for. But safety doesn't come from someone else. No
Mhm.
one else is going to give us safety. We have to find it from within.
What do you think like the most, as far like, so let's just use safety, but what do you think most of the underlying need is? Like,
Yeah.
what do you see like, and not the most, but like maybe like the most common, like with women that you work with or like people that you work with, like what do you, when you're doing this work with them, do you see like a commonality?
People want to feel loved,
Hmm.
people want to feel seen, and people want to feel heard. Those are the three. I mean, if you go beyond the, security, control, and approval, that's like those needs are sort of bottom of the barrel of Maslow's hierarchy needs. Everyone needs security, control, and approval. But underneath that, we want to be seen. We want to be acknowledged, loved, and heard. Like that's it. And
That
if,
totally relates to my audience, I know, because like every stepmom that I've talked to, and then like even in the community, like that's the common thread.
yeah, and nobody has taught us how to listen to another so they feel heard. Nobody's taught us that it's a learned skill. I just said to someone this morning, spend 22 years in school. You learn the math, you learn the psychology, you learn the history, you learn the physics. Nobody teaches you how to be human, how to be in relationship. And these are fundamental skills to survive in this world, to thrive in this world. Community, building relationships, those are the single most important things you'll do as a human being. And we don't spend 5 minutes of that in 22 years of education, unless you have some really fantastic teacher who, you know, is capable of doing that and meeting the SAT scores all at the same time.
Right, yeah. And
Yeah,
then God forbid, like whatever's going on at your own household,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly right.
A lot
So,
of
I
times
mean,
that's not even a great like model.
say that again.
A lot of times that's not even a great model. Sometimes it is, but like most of the time, you like look back on your childhood. I mean, for me specific, my parents are divorced, so obviously I didn't have a great model of like how a healthy relationship goes if it ends like in a divorce. But yeah, and so you don't learn it at school, and if you're not learning it at home, then where the hell do you learn it? Social media, where you're getting
Right.
snippets of it, and that's a lot of times generalized. So how are
It's
you figuring this out?
We're not learning it at all. And then we get in conflict in our adult relationships. We get scared because we all go into our adult relationships saying, I'm not going to do what my parents did. We all say that and then we all do it because it's unavoidable. Anyone listening in, I want to say, if you're doing what your parents did, like you're human, you can't avoid it until you become deeply aware of it, face it, and then start to untangle yourself from those patterns. They're patterns. You're just a human being, and that's what human beings do. They have patterns. So we have to go in and literally like unwind the patterns, and it takes a lot of awareness and a lot of practice to do that. And everyone's capable of it. And it's not terribly hard. It just takes devotion and willingness.
And the openness to actually like try it.
Yeah.
Because that's really scary, right?
Yeah. And how many times people say to you, like, you're just like your mother or you're just like your father. Yeah. And then you get angry and defensive because you don't want to be just like them. But if next time you hear someone say that to you, and if you, accepted the fact that that made you feel angry and got curious about it, like, oh, why does that trigger me so much? And then we go, well, how is that true? If I'm getting feedback from the universe, like someone's giving me feedback, let me go look for how that's true. We start to bring curiosity into the game. And then next thing you know, well, yeah, I can see how I'm just like my mom. Oh, then we can really start shifting things because if we can accept the fact that I'm human and I am going to repeat the patterns I was taught for 18 years of my life, that's a normal thing to happen. If I can just accept that and not judge myself, not make myself bad or wrong, not even make my mom bad or wrong, because that's what she was programmed to do, by the way. If we can just accept all that as an isness, then we could start to bring some like kindness in, some compassion. These are all, medicinal qualities that shift the things that we get stuck around, and then we get curious and we could start to change. But there's no way we're going to change if we're coming at it from a resentful, judgmental, resistant place. We just can't, change doesn't happen in that vibration.
I wonder how we got to this. Like how when like if somebody were to say to you, "Hey, you know what, Annmarie, I don't like that you do this," or same with me, like when the marriage counselor was like, "No, let's talk about you," and I was like, "No." Like, how did we get there, like as humans, where it's innately wrong, if you will, for somebody to call out some sort of character flaw or like we don't like the accountability of like, hey, your actions are this. I always like that's such like an interesting question and I ask myself a lot. Like you when you talked about the curiosity, I find that works really well in parenting too. If I can figure out like how we got to this situation or how my kid or my stepkid did whatever it was that they did that they thought was appropriate but wasn't, like how did you get there? Because then we can go back and work on fixing that thought process. But I always wonder that, like, as humans, like, how do we get to the point where it's such a personal attack for somebody to say, "Hey, I don't like this," or, "Oh, you know what? You act just like that other person," and I'm like, how do we get to the point where we didn't like that or we don't like that? It's not welcome.
Um, Fear, like we're
Mhm.
mammals, we're human beings, and our need for acceptance and belonging is right down there between, for our basic needs for survival. So we need connection with one another to be accepted.
Mhm.
And if we feel like that's being threatened, then we're going to get defensive about it and say, no, 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 I'm not, because we're trying to defend our need. Again, it goes back to the needs, our need for acceptance and approval. So when we can look beyond that and go, oh, I can feel the part of me that's being defensive because I'm afraid, then I could go take care of myself. Yeah, honey, you make sense to me. I get you're afraid. You don't have to defend, and then you can get curious. And from once you nurture that childlike part that has a need for, acceptance and approval, once you go in and nurture yourself, you don't actually have a need for anyone else to do that. It's
Mhm.
not about like, I don't need Alicia to fix me. I'm going to fix me. Then I'm available, fully available. My heart's open, my mind is open, I'm curious to be in relationship to you. Now that's a portal, that's a opening to love, to connection. The only way we connect as human beings is through an open heart. Our only job is to figure out how to keep our heart open and how to open others' hearts.
Okay, so as you were talking about this, like the defensiveness, a huge thing. I mean, I experienced it too, and maybe you did too, but I get this a lot from stepmoms. And so like the defensiveness, like really, I'm like, oh, you would be a perfect person to ask because I think it is fear-based. But let's say that I'll just use an example of like your stepkid is doing something that you don't like, or maybe you have house expectations and they're not being followed, or whatever it is. And so you bring it up to your partner, immediately defensive, like immediately they, whatever. So do you think that it's fear because it's not acceptance of like their offspring, or like, can you talk me to that? Talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
So these are the yeah, I have a great I'm sort of plugging something here, so full disclosure, but I have a great course online that I teach called Drop the Drama. And all of this stuff that you're talking about is drama, and drama comes from fear. So it's going to be multi-layered in these situations, particularly in step parenting roles, right? Because first, you've got the relationship between you and your spouse. That's the primary relationship. Then you're bringing in this other person. But if the primary relationship is experiencing any kind of threat, then that first defense is going to come up, and I'm going to start protecting for that. Then on top of it, you're going to protect for the child. So there's all sorts of layers to what's happening, and you have to be incredibly present with yourself to be able to recognize what are the layers I'm moving through that I'm protecting. So if you're in the parental role where you're being challenged around your kid's behavior, you're going to automatically be defensive. If you're in the role who's bringing the behavior to the other's attention, you're going to feel there's some fear that your need's not going to get met. I'm not going to be seen. I'm not going to be heard. I'm not going to be respected or validated. So it's really, really complicated. And you have to be able to be willing to go look at all your triggers and all the stories you're telling yourself about those triggers. Like, my kid is bad. I'm bad. You're not going to love me. I'm not going to, a lot of it in, particularly with women who's married to a man, there's a lot of women married to women, but married to a man, men tend to fall into a role I call hero role, where they're just trying to make the peace with everyone. They just want the kid to be happy and they want the wife to be happy. And they're just always scrambling for, like, how can I smooth all this out? I don't want the conflict. I want to just go turn on the football game, go play golf, go read my, smoke my cigar, do whatever I need to do. And they don't want to deal with any of this. So they're going to immediately get triggered and feel like, whatever I have to do so that my kid stops and she stops and I can just chill. So, and then women aren't going to like that, because then they feel like they have to deal with everything, and they're not, their spouses aren't going to handle what they want handled. And it's really challenging. So it's important that you recognize everyone is playing a role in this conflict, and you have to see what role you're playing. You're either playing a role of victim, you're either playing a role of villain, or you're either playing a role of hero, and you're going to ping one another in all those roles. So if you bring it to your spouse, you're automatically in the villain role because that's how you're being experienced. It doesn't mean you're a villain. It just means that's a role that is being identified in this particular conflict. And you got to go look at, what are the parts of me that are showing up this way, creating this conflict, that feel disempowered, that I can go work with, so that I can come to my spouse and say, hey, I have this need that's not getting addressed, and this thing is happening, and I'm wondering if we can work together to get this need addressed. None of us do that because we can't identify our own needs. We're so triggered, we don't even know that there's a need not being addressed.
Mhm.
That was a lot. Did I just?
No, yeah, I think that's great though, because it is. And I think a lot of times in situations that I see, it's the stepmom is pissed because, maybe they set house expectations, rules, whatever you want to call them, or not, but she pulls most of like the mental load around the house, or, she's the project manager for the house. And it's like, why is everyone else not pulling their weight, right? And then like going to their partner and saying, your kid is not doing this. Like, okay, what is that underlying need? What is happening? But it's like I've asked so many times. I've been so polite. I've tried everything. I've done all of the things, but I'm not getting anywhere. And so what I'm doing is now I'm anger from inside out, and I just blew my top. And now we're getting nowhere. And now our conflict is at a complete gridlock.
Yeah. And then you become the angry,
Evil stepmom.
witch. Yeah. And you've really just been set up for that. But there's a way in which it's like I wish it was just a really simple answer and I could say it's this plus this and this. And
Right?
it's
Yeah. It's all like contingent on like the situation and the dynamic.
it starts with you and your spouse being able to have a strong enough um, ability to hold space for one another's triggers
Hmm.
so that once that foundation is strong enough, it's not disrupted when you start introducing the kids.
Hmm.
That is an incredibly um, masterful skill to develop when blending families because I'm bringing my kids in, he's bringing his kids in. They have a thing happening, we have a thing happening. I don't want to disrupt this thing. It's working for, he doesn't want to disrupt this thing. And then we've got our thing. So you've got like four layers that you're trying to bring together. And takes a lot of it takes a lot of skill to be able to honor that, to disappoint people. When you're blending families, you want your kids to be happy. You want your kids to like your partner. You don't want your kid to be upset with the step person. So you try and smooth things over. But the one of the things that I've really come to accept is I have to be willing for there to be disruption in the system. I have to be willing for people not to like me. I have to be willing for my kids to not like my husband at times. All of that has to be okay if we're going to negotiate getting our all of our needs met. And we all have to learn to respect everyone. Everyone's needs have to be respected. And there's always a way to create a win-win.
Yeah. And I think it's really the point of you have to be okay with that disruption is the hardest part, right? Because the kids have already been through a lot. There's a divorce, so their parents aren't together. And, if it's a high conflict situation, and or let's say that it's not, but they've been through a lot. A divorce is traumatic, whether you want it or not, right? And then, the kids are going through like back and forth and like trying to remember all the things or whose house am I going to this week or, depending on what their schedule is. And so it's like a lot of times I see, because I typically work with stepmoms, but a lot of times I see the dad being like, I'm trying to keep everything smooth because I don't want my kids to feel insert whatever bad emotion, right? And emotions are just emotions. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just whatever it is. And I think that's where we get tripped up is a lot of times because the kids have already been through so much. Okay, well, then I'm just going to make this easier. Okay, but at what cost?
Yeah. It's a great question. At what cost?
And
That's
that's what I ask like stepmoms too, because it also goes back to them like pick your battles because at what cost are you willing to die on this hill?
yeah.
And that is something that I had to learn because I was very much out of whack with my expectations and my reality. I'm sure you can relate. And so my expectations were way up here. I was willing to die trying to meet them. Well, not everyone else was, shockingly, not everyone else was. And so it was a matter of like, okay, do I need the dishes set up? Like if they were hand washed, do I need them set up a very specific way that I do it every single time somebody else does it? My ego driving the bus was like, hell yes, you do. The rational part of me is like, who cares? Like we're not gonna sabotage this relationship over dishes.
Yeah.
It's not gonna matter in 5 years. It's not gonna matter in 5 months. But at what cost am I willing to like sabotage myself and whoever it is, like this relationship? Like why? This is ridiculous. But it's like,
Argue over dishes, like the dishes argument. Oh my God.
I mean, I've never, absolutely never had that argument ever.
I
Right.
just sent out in my newsletter Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn and one, I don't know what movie, the breakup. I think it was called The Breakup. And there's this whole scene about the dishes. And I used that scene as an example
Really?
because it isn't about the dishes. And you're right. It's like, I'm not going to die on the hill about this. But at the same time, it's the need underneath the dishes. Like my husband we used to argue nonstop about the dishes. And I'd be like, I don't understand. The sink is clean. And to him, I didn't know this, to him, a clean sink is if you dried the sink out. You have to dry it out every time you use it. And so none of us were doing that because who does that? That's crazy. Who
That
dries
is so crazy. Yeah. How dare you guys not try it?
It's a sink. It has what? It's made for water. So he was like, no one's cleaning the sink. And I'm like, they're cleaning the sink. What are you talking about? And so it took forever for us to get to like, oh, dude, you want the sink dry? Well, first of all, that's nutty. But okay, let's talk about that. But we had to have a whole conversation about that. And then again, it's not about the dishes. It's about some part of him that felt like my needs aren't getting met. I'm not being respected. I'm not being honored, whatever. Once we got through all those layers, the sink was the sink. It has less. Now we still like a clean sink in our house, and that's one of our boundaries. Like, dude, everyone does their dishes,
And
but
everyone dries the sink.
the sink. Nobody's drying the sink except him. Um, but yeah, it's not about the dishes. It's about there's some need not getting met there. And once we feel like our needs are being respected and honored, if someone leaves a dish in the sink, it's no longer, the straw that broke the camel back. It's just, I either wash the dish or I don't. It doesn't become a thing.
Hmm.
That's what we're trying to get to here. We're trying to get to like, of course, we're all going to have needs in our home. Like we just want things the way we want things.
Yeah.
And we have a right to want them that way. And our kids have a right to want things their way. And so that's all fine and good. But beyond that, we want to create as much connection, as much, you know, love and peace in our family system as we can.
Hmm. I think that's so important, like especially if you're playing the long game. But let's go back to something that you said a little bit ago about breaking the drama loop.
Yeah.
Because I feel like people are caught there. I mean, I was absolutely caught there. Absolutely caught there. And then like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yes. Well, whenever we're in fear, we're going to create conflict, and all conflict results in drama. And drama happens because we feel powerless. We feel like I don't actually know how to get my needs met. I don't know how to get you to change what you're doing.
To
Like,
make me feel.
yes, make me feel better. So when we feel powerless, we play a role. There's a psychologist named Stephen Cartman who created a model called the drama triangle. And when we're in conflict, we play one of three roles. We play the victim role, the hero role, or the villain role. You'll play, you know, all the roles in your conflict, whichever one works or gets you the result. And when we are in that loop, all we are creating and all we're capable of creating is more and more drama.
Mhm.
And one of two things happens. You either blow up and it gets catastrophic, or you exhaust yourself going around the drama loop so much so that someone just drops out of exhaustion. You don't actually resolve anything. It just, I'm so tired, whatever. And it's a give up. It's not a surrender, two different things. It's a give up. And then what happens, this is what you said at the very top of the call, it's going to happen again.
Mhm.
And you keep getting on the drama triangle over and over and over again because these personas or these parts of you are trying to get your needs met and they just don't know how.
Mhm. Yeah, oh my gosh, my husband is a saint, a absolute saint, because I had so many needs that weren't getting met. But like you said, I was so triggered, I had no idea that these needs weren't getting met. And you're right, he would just drop out and be like, okay, Alicia, whatever. And it wasn't a surrender. I expected, like, he would say to me, this does not paint me in a good light, but he would say, you expect a complete, in like legit surrender, like complete surrender when something goes wrong. And that's not how this works. I mean, thank God, like, not so much anymore because I've done the work now, but like, absolutely, I was anger from inside out too, and like could blow a top at the drop of a hat. I mean, literally, there would be no hat, it would be gone. And this guy has ice water in his veins. And I'm like, you are like the ice to my fire, the calm to my storm. And it's amazing because, now we have conversations about it, and he's like, it's really nice being on this side of things where you don't flip out about whatever it is. And I'm like, yeah, but it was absolutely a cycle. And earlier when you had talked about like recognizing when you are becoming triggered, because it's not like you just go from 0 to 60. A lot of people think that you do, but there's a way that you're getting there. You just
You're
we
not aware.
yeah, we no longer listen to it. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? Like, how do I get off this drama cycle? How do I see all of these things? What is happening?
It's awareness. You've got to develop deep and radical self-awareness. And once you get, awareness is the portal. So awareness is like opening up your eyes and seeing clearly. And then you're like, oh, wow, I blow my top. I have anger stuff. Great. Now let me walk through the anger. Let me not try and stop it. Let me
Mhm.
not judge it. Not let me make it wrong and bad. Let me go into the anger and find out what need is not getting or has not gotten met since I was two, by the way, because these are all childhood related things. Let me
Always, always,
all,
always.
all tied back to it. So let me go back and find that one that's really like the reason my top is being blown is because that part of me is tired of not getting its needs met. Let me go find that one and let me go get those needs met from a really conscious, adult, adaptive place. Once you're able to do that, which, by the way, for anyone listening in, sounds all great and rosy, not an easy party.
So
Like
hard.
you have to go find that one. Then you have to accept that one. Then you have to find compassion for that one. You have to be, it's such a vulnerable process to go through and face all these parts of yourself. And I would say most people don't want to do it because it is hard. It is hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to accept that we're flawed. I mean, we are
Mhm.
flawed human beings because that's the process of evolving. You have to go through all this. Once you find those parts and you bring acceptance, then you can start transforming the anger to whatever the medicinal quality is. It might be compassion, it might be kindness, it might be, you know, the calm to your storm. Like you said, your husband is the calm to the storm. And the reason you're able to heal that pattern of behavior is because he can create space for you to wig out and have your experiences without him interfering with it. Often, what happens is when we get into conflict, we kick up our partner's drama and then we're entangled in it. But if he's choosing not to engage in it, which by the way is a masterful skill,
Yeah.
it's really hard to do, but if he can just stand by and like, okay, she's doing that thing. I don't have to engage with it. I also don't have to judge it. I also don't have to change her. I don't have to make her bad. I can just recognize she's in a process right now and I can hold space for that. Water is a beautiful metaphor because that's what water does. Water, like it's emotions, it grounds, it helps you flow like, it's like a river flowing. So it's beautiful that you use that. He's a water to your fire. These are all the elements of nature. So when he's able to create that space for you, then you're able to move through and start to transform that because you feel safe fully showing up. You don't have to get small, you don't have to judge, you don't have to resist. There's not any more resistance in the system,
Mhm.
and there's safety for that one to come out. And then, you have kids. You know what it's like when your 2-year-old is having a tantrum. You don't go have a tantrum with them. You hold them and you hug them and you address like, what do you need? And let me, you as the adult go, oh, this child needs a calm corner, this child needs a hug, this child needs a nap. We like know what the need is and we go address the need. We
Mhm.
don't do that as adults because we think adults shouldn't be doing these things anymore. But the truth is we do them because our needs weren't met. So that until they get met, the core need's not going to resolve.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. And a lot of times it took me doing the work to figure out that a lot of times it's just adults walking around with like a kid inside of them, or like a little kid walking around like an adult body. There we go. And but then I could like pinpoint it in different people that I would engage with. And so I knew how to, or I learned how to engage with them, or if there was a conflict, like I knew, okay, I know if I'm talking to Annmarie, I'm going to be okay being direct and like being honest with her, where somebody else I might have to sugarcoat something, which really isn't my style, but right, bees with honey, not vinegar.
Yeah. Well, like this, what you're pointing at is shape shifting, and there's two ways of doing that. You can shapeshift from what I'd say love and compassion, or you can shapeshift from the drama triangle where you're like trying to manage
Yeah.
person. When we shapeshift from love, we're meeting people where they are and we're just acknowledging what is. Like they're only available for this. They're not available for honest feedback. I'm not going to give the gift of honest feedback to someone who isn't available to hear it. That would, just think about literally giving someone a gift. You're not going to give them a gift that they can't use.
Mhm.
So you're, as a woman, you're using your wise discernment to tap into source to know like what's of service right now. Is it of service to give this particular person honest feedback? Likely not. Or this person, is this person available for honest feedback? Yeah, they are. And then, you know, you're just being intelligent is what you are. You're tapping into that.
I think something about the shape shifting that I've never like thought about until you just said it is kids of divorced parents do that
All the time.
all the time. And I think when you just said it, I was like, holy shit, like that's exactly what's happening with the kids. Like I get it, right? Like I understand. And I have said to stepmoms that I coach, like the kids are just surviving at the other house if it's as chaotic as you're telling me, right? But yes, they are shapeshifting for love, but then also shapeshifting off of the drama triangle, like you just talked about. And I'm like, that makes so much sense to me where they can just say, okay, I know when I'm at insert whoever's house, this is what it's like there. I'm not going to try, especially as a kid. It doesn't matter. So if you've got house A and house B, and house A is very structured, very routine, very put together, very not perfect, but like try to do things the right way, right? Where house B is more relaxed, more like the parents are trying to be the kid's friend, or there's no rules or whatever. If they're going from house A with the structure to house B, that kid, as a kid, is probably not going to make a dent or a difference in however that parent is parenting, right? Like they're just trying to get by and they're just trying to
Or
survive
survive.
at their house. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to say about that. I think it's easy as a step parent to get into these polarities about like this house is more stable and this house is more chaotic and this is better and this is worse. And I want to say that I agree and I don't.
Mhm.
So the, I actually agree because I believe I like structure, I like stability, I like organization, all that. Um, and I believe that these are the best conditions for kids to thrive. Now, when I look at it from a slightly higher perspective, like a meta perspective, and I'm in the mindset of everything is happening for your highest good. So, how could it be true that our kid has a chaotic household and a structured household, and both are for their highest good? Like that level of acceptance and curiosity is is kind of what I'm after. And I will say, I have a bias for structure and organization because that's the way I like to live my life. And I believe, I had a similar situation. I have a very structured household, and then my stepkids had a very chaotic household. And to this day, it's very messy. Like it's just messy. But I can't actually know that the path that they're on isn't their soul's path. That chaos isn't what they need
Mhm.
for their evolution, their spiritual growth. So we can look at it from two perspectives, just like 3D human life thriving on this planet Earth. And then there's a soul's journey happening all at the same time. So keeping both of those in mind, I think, is a real challenge. But you know, it's just we're all on these journeys. So I don't know what my kids need. They might not, they might be at their dad's house and be in chaos. It's not actually true in my situation, but that might be happening, and it might be exactly what they need. Here's a good example. Um, I tend to have a more nurturing approach, and my ex-husband has a very like rigid approach, typical of men, women, not very atypical. And I tend to be more conversational with my kids, hear their sides of view, and he's sort of like, nope, and nope, it's this way or the highway kind of a thing. And my daughters don't really like it, and my kids don't like it. They like the conversational approach. However, as they've grown into their 20s, I can see how it's such a gift for them because what my daughters tend to do is they collapse under the pressure of pushback from their dad. Like they don't want to argue with him, they don't want to push back, they don't want to stand up for themselves. And for a long time, I would be like, yeah, he's being a jerk, or that's not nice. Now I've been saying to my daughters, your dad's giving you a great gift. You're a woman in a man's world, because let's face it, we live in a patriarchal paradigm that's not going away anytime soon, or hopefully it will, but we got to get on that. You have to learn how to speak your voice. You have to learn how to stand up for yourself. And your dad is being your teacher. If you're not willing to stand up for yourself over there in the most trusted place you possibly can, because he loves you, then you're going to have a hell of a time going out in the world and doing that, because this is your learning ground where you're learning how to be your highest and best self in your home.
Mhm.
And I keep, telling my daughters, this is an invitation. This is an invitation for you to step into your power and stand up to your dad and not be disrespectful, but like, no, no, I need this, or my need has to get met. And so they're learning. They don't like it, but they're learning.
I think you're right though. Like it's good to have both aspects. And so you learn how to operate in both.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're
it is what it is.
you're learning how to function in the world where there's a lot of different characters out there. And so you're pulling out, you're shapeshifting. You're like, I know what I need to do here to get what needs, what the highest and best experience is for all. And yeah, that's a really good skill to have.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you are thinking like, oh, well, my stepkid would never do that at our house, or we don't allow that, or whatever it is, just like Annmarie said, they're just shape shifting, like to get through whatever, to survive, to get their needs met, whatever that looks like. So don't take it personally, like because a lot of stepmoms get down on themselves, like, well, at our house we do this, or we're trying to ingrain this in them, and we're whatever it is. And why aren't they like that? And I think sometimes we forget that even though we're the adult in the situation and we want to control all of the narratives and all of the outcomes and all of the everything, especially as a stepmom, right? Like very type A, very control freak kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah, oh yeah.
You can relate. Um, I think that we forget that these kids are also their own person. They have their own wants, needs, and desires, and they can think for themselves. And so it's a I don't know, like it's not a social experiment, but sometimes I'm like, I feel like it is,
Yeah.
right? It's
Oh
so
yeah.
weird. It's like this interesting dynamic. And then, since my parents are divorced, like I can, as an adult, look back at my child and say, oh, you know what? This could have been different, or this could have been different, or whatever. But same thing with my stepkids. They're both now adults. They can look back on their childhood in our house, in their mom's house, and say, oh, like this could have been different. This was really great, or that could have been better. And so if you're listening to this, like your stepkids at some point are also going to be adults if they are not already. And they are also going to think, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. And sometimes it's things that like you don't even think that make the biggest impact, or something that you thought made a really big impact that didn't. And you're like, really?
I'm laughing internally so hard right now back to the sink because now all my kids have grown and moved out of the house and had roommates and stuff. And they're all like, nobody cleans the sink. It's so annoying. And it's like, and now to them, it's a really big deal and they want the sink cleaned. And they see it from a different perspective. Like they'll laugh with us now, but they'll be like, it's really unpleasant to go and try and cook something when everyone else has left their stuff in the sink and then I have to be left to clean, and we just kind
Yeah.
of giggle about it now. But yeah, like this stuff, what the seeds that we're planting, even if they don't feel like it in the moment, those seeds will be sown. And our kids grow into those things later in life and they take all that with them. And we don't necessarily get to see it at home and in the moment. I always remember like parents calling me and saying, "Oh my gosh, your kid is so polite and so thoughtful and so kind and so helpful and all the things." And I'm like, "Yeah, at your house, And I remember thinking, "Oh, okay, something I'm doing is working because it's translating." And when they come home, they're a basket case, but that's also working because like I said about your husband holding space for you, they need a place to melt down. They need a safe place. And if they're coming home and melting down, that means they feel safe at home.
Mhm.
And that's a real honor.
Yeah, I think that's a hard concept to grasp sometimes too, because you're like, I get the worst.
Yeah.
And because I know that I'm like, I appreciate, even though sometimes I am like, oh my God, in my head, I'm like, oh, I've gotten really good. This is so ridiculous. I can't believe I'm going to tell you this. But when I would do, like when I was going through this and like trying to do the work, sometimes I made it a game to
Yeah.
see how long or how many things could happen before I would like flip out. And then I'd be like, oh, you're getting better at this. It was like a metric I could measure. Is that nerdy or what?
Oh, I love it. How did you do it? How did you like how did the game work for you?
Oh,
So
this is so ridiculous. Okay, so because I knew what my triggers were, like specifically for step family stuff, I knew what my triggers were. And so sometimes things would happen and it was this does not sound healthy at all, but it was almost like a suppression of like feelings or like emotions. And then later I would like process through them and I'd be like, wow, look, you didn't have to flip out and you still like got the outcome you wanted, or you still like the sky didn't fall, or like no one lost their mind, or the dishes weren't done. And guess what? They still like they weren't set up the way that you wanted them. And guess what? They still dried, if you can believe that. Um, and so, you know what, like that's so nerdy. I can't even believe I'm telling you this. But then even like with my daughter sometimes too, because you can see what's happening, right? Like you had said earlier, do they need a hug? Do they need a nap? Do they need a snack? Do they need food? Like, are they overstimulated? Like, what is going on? It's the constant like hyper awareness of like what's happening. And yeah, and so like as you know, we have a new puppy too, and so it's like how many things can happen. And then I'm like, wow, I'm getting really good at this. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't care how good I am at this, right? And like my head explodes. So it's just like, but that's so nerdy. But yeah, it was like a game for me. It was like a challenge to see how many things can go sideways.
okay,
Bef-
so I've got a new challenge for you.
Okay, tell me. I'm in.
So it's a preemptive thing. So once you get to the point that you're talking about, like how many things can I like stack on my cards, the house of cards before I crash, then we start to set it up with like, how can I create the conditions so that I'm not even having to add stuff. So, in other words, like, how can I create the conditions for the most exquisite experience I could imagine? And it's about setting the container, setting the stage for success, like you would any production, right? Like if you're, producing a play or something, you're going to create the most exquisite conditions for your success. So I really like the a game to play, like, what do I need to do to create success going forward rather than retroactively or grinning and bearing it, which is what most of us do most of the time. So my husband and I are now doing that because he has a tendency to override a lot, and he overrides, and then kind of busts. And so we keep backing up. I'm like, what do you need so that you don't have to override anything?
Mhm.
So that, like, get your need met before you're not getting your need met. So it's been a fun and hard game to play. But what's interesting about it is I can start tracking before he tracks that he's off course.
Yeah. Yeah, I can do that too. Okay, so I don't play the game anymore because I've gotten to the point that you're talking about now, like where almost all of the time my needs are met. And if they're not met, it's because I've done it. Like, and I mean, obviously, right, they're my needs. And it's because I stayed up too late. It's because I, ate breakfast too early, or maybe I didn't eat enough, or I skipped whatever. Um, but yes, I can see it happening. I can see it happening in me. Like I can feel it. And I'm like, okay, what is going on? Like, why am I like a look or a tone or something, and I'm like, okay, that should not have set me off, like, or that should not have started to make me feel like what is going on. But yes, I can see it like in my husband, I can see it in my daughter, I can see it in the puppy, I can see it. Yeah. So but it is a really interesting thing. And I like that you don't think that I'm crazy for like making it a game or like calling
Oh,
it
I
a
love
game.
it.
Because I'm like, this is so nerdy, but it was like fun for me to like see like to just the metric of like, okay, am I making any progress? That's what I wanted, right? Like type A, control freak, very driven. Like, okay, I want to make progress. How do I measure this seemingly immeasurable metric?
Yeah, that's really fun. I love it. I love that you made it a
It's so
game.
nerdy.
I think
It's
we
so
should
nerdy.
all do that
Yeah.
because come on, we're just trying to get through life here. We might as
We
well
all
make it,
die.
yeah, exactly.
We all
Make it
die.
as possible along the way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Annmarie, this was super fun. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, I would thank you. It's been really fun. I We can go on for hours. You can hop to my website, annmariechereso.me, M-E, and I have all kinds of freebies there that are fun. I have this free quiz that I just launched this week, and it helps you identify the roles you play when you drop into drama and conflict, and what your favorite distinctive role is in creating conflict. So that's a really fun new freebie that people can go and play and see what roles they fall into.
What's your favorite role?
I go straight to villain.
Yeah.
I'm right there.
Same. It's like I'm resisting it, but yeah, it's the magnet. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I'm right. As deep as you can get into villain as possible.
I can see the horns. Yeah.
Yeah, no, really big antlers.
Yeah,
So
totally.
I'm definitely making progress because now, as soon as the villain arrives on the scene, and I'm like, oh, honey, what do you need? What do you need? And it's okay. But villain, it's a tricky one. I'd like to see how many people fall into the villain category. A lot of women do.
That's interesting. Yeah, awesome. Okay, I will link that quiz in the show notes and then your website and stuff too. But thank you so much. This has been really awesome.
Really fun, Alicia. Thanks so much. And I really love what you're doing. And I think it's a great gift. So thanks for letting me be part of it.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything was helpful or resonated with you, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm just at Alicia Crosco. And if you could leave a 5-star rating and review while you're at it, that would also be really helpful. And if you find yourself struggling with your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side community, which is my own private community for stepmoms, where you get to connect with other stepmoms around the world and myself, where I hold weekly office hours and monthly group coaching. It's kind of like you have your own personal coach in your own back pocket. Again, without that hefty price tag. See you next week.